It's trying real hard, Adam. It's flickering.
Okay, it is 6:30 on Wednesday, April 15th. This is the meeting of the SAU 19 board. I will call this meeting to order this evening, as this is the first meeting that the board has had since the election. And just want to share a little bit of information if I can. It's important to note that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor, as a result of COVID-19 pandemic, in accordance with the governor's emergency order number 12, pursuant to executive order 2020-04, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. Please note, there is no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting, which was authorized pursuant to the governor's executive order. However, in accordance with the executive order, I am confirming that we, A, provide public access to the meeting by telephone with additional access possibilities by video or other electronic means. This meeting is being broadcast on local cable access in Goffstown, as well as on the Goffstown Television YouTube channel. If anyone wishes to provide public comment, you're able to do so by going to SAU 19, the building at 11 School Street, and there is a laptop for anyone who wishes to make a public comment. Please respect social distancing and remain outside the SAU building if another individual happened to be in the lobby. Providing public access, we have previously sufficiently posted this information, and this body has consistently followed through on all the requirements pursuant to holding a meeting in accordance with the governor's emergency order number 12. So with that, I would ask all of you to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. If Mr. Gross can put the flag up, please. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United
States of America
and
and to the republic for which it stands,
one
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Gross. We will begin, as this is your first SAU board meeting after the election, consistent with RSA 194C5, as well as policy AA. We will begin with the election of officers. Typically, we rotate, and your policy allows for the rotation of the chair position between Goffstown and New Boston. So we typically, if our previous SAU board chair was Heather Trapaz from Goffstown, so typically we would extend the opportunity if there was a New Boston board member that would like to be the SAU chair. And if there are none, then we would give Goffstown the opportunity to go ahead and fill that role. So I would begin by asking if there are any nominations for the chair position from the New Boston board. I will recognize Heather Trapaz. Mr. Gross, if you can unmute her.
Thank you, Scott. I nominate Wendy Lambert to be SAU chair.
Okay, this is a little different from regular motions. There's no need for a second. We're simply looking for a plurality of the votes. I would ask if there were any other nominations for the position of chair.
Is Wendy amenable to being chair?
Don't unmute her. She might say no.
I am.
Great. Seeing that there are no other nominations for chair, I will do a roll call vote, and I'm just gonna go in the same order as my as the layout here. Tim Stetson. Tim, Scott, you want to unmute everybody? Tim Stetson.
Yes, sorry.
Heather Trapaz.
Yes.
Carrie Jenks.
Yes.
Dan Cloutier.
Yes.
Sam Perrin.
Yes.
Ginny McKinnon.
Yes.
Susanna Buzzell.
Yes.
Retta Chaffee.
Yes.
Janelle O'Brien.
Yes.
Oh, we have Mrs. Vermakowitz. I didn't see you before. Mrs.
Yes.
Ellen Vermakowitz.
Yes.
Rob Witt.
Yes.
Jared Talbot.
Yes.
And lastly, I believe Wendy Lambert.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Wendy. And with that, I will pass the meeting over to you.
If we unmute her.
Miles, sorry. Thanks, Scott. So we have a few other election of officers. We have the vice chair. So if there's a nomination for vice chair. Carrie? I'm sorry, you were on mute. I think you, I think you put yourself on mute again.
Okay, third time's the charm. Heather Treypad, Vice Chair. Seriously?
We heard you,
You
Heather
heard me
Trey.
that time. Okay, good.
Okay, just want to
Heather
confirm.
heard me the first time, I think. Yeah.
No, I didn't hear you.
Okay, so thank you for that nomination. Are there any other nominations? Seeing none, I'll do a roll call. Tim Stetson,
Yes.
Heather Trey, I'm sorry. I'll wait till the end, Heather. For you. Carrie Jenks,
Yes.
Dan Cloutier,
Yes.
Sam Perrin,
Yes.
Ginny McKinnon. Is that a yes, Ginny? Yes. Thank you. Susanna Buzzell.
Yes.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Retta Chaffee,
Yes.
Janelle O'Brien,
Yes.
Ellen Vermarkowitz. Sorry, Ellen, you're on mute.
Well, I have to get unmuted. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Yep.
Yes.
Thank you. Rob Witt.
Yes.
Thank you. Jared Talbot.
Yes.
Bill Schmidt.
Yes.
Thank you. And Heather Treypaz.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, next is treasurer. Is there a nomination for treasurer? Heather.
I'll nominate Dan Cloutier.
Thank you. Is there any other nomination? Seeing none. Dan, are you okay with that?
I am willing to continue.
Thank you. Okay, we'll do roll call. Tim Stetson,
Yes.
Heather Treypaz,
Yes.
Carrie Jenks,
Yes.
Dan Cloutier,
Yes.
Sam Perrin,
Yes.
Ginny McKinnon,
Yes.
Susanna,
Yes.
Retta Chaffee,
Yes.
Janelle,
Yes.
Ellen Vermarkowitz,
Yes.
Rob,
Yes.
Jared,
Yes.
and Bill Schmidt.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you all.
And then we have lastly the secretary. So are there any nominations for secretary?
Don't everybody speak at once.
Carrie Jenks. Thank you, Ginny. Are there any other nominations? Seeing none. Carrie, are you okay?
Sure.
Moving forward? Okay. Tim Stetson. For roll
Yes.
call. Thank you. Heather Treypaz. Heather, was that a yes? I'm sorry.
Sorry. Yes.
That's okay. Dan,
Yes.
Sam Perrin,
Yes.
Ginny,
Yes.
Susanna,
Yes.
Retta,
Yes.
Janelle O'Brien,
Yes.
Ellen,
Yes.
Rob,
Yes.
Jared Talbot,
Yes.
Bill Schmidt,
Yes.
and Carrie Jenks.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks. Okay, next is public comment. Do we have anybody at the SAU? It doesn't look like it. I see the window.
Wendy, if
Yep.
I may,
Yep.
I would ask Mr. Gross, we received 2 public comments that the Goffstown board may not be aware. We had a New Boston school board meeting just prior to this SAU meeting, and we did receive 2 public comments that both of those folks had indicated they would like their public comment to be read into the record for the SAU board meeting. Mr. Gross, would you mind doing that, please?
You just got to give me a second to queue it up. So just hold on 1 second. Okay, the first one is from Marilyn Stegian of Clark Hill Road, New Boston. I am sending an opinion about the 2020 April vacation. I suggest not holding April vacation and instead every teacher and student take every Friday off in May. The second public comment was submitted by Mindy Charles of Town Farm Road, also of New Boston. I just wanted to give an opinion about school breaks for New Boston Central School. This time of connected learning has been intense and stressful for many involved. From the staff and townspeople that I've spoken to, there is a definite need for some downtime and mental health recovery time. The preference would be to have 2 long weekends, as a full 9-day break is not necessary. One at the end of April during the week and one in May. A suggestion would be to have a 4-day weekend, April 25th through the 28th, with no work assigned by teachers for that time. Then extend Memorial Day weekend by 1 extra day for a second 4-day weekend with no teacher work assigned for those days either. This would allow for teachers to take a break with their families, but would space that time out a bit to prevent burnout for teachers, students, and families. It would then shorten our school year by 2 days for the scheduled vacation that was unused. And again, that was Mindy Charles of Town Farm Road of New Boston.
Thanks, Scott. Seeing no other public comments, we'll move. And we do have the April vacation week at the near the bottom of the agenda, so we'll come back to that.
Correct.
Thank you. We'll move to the approval of the minutes. So we have a few different dates to approve. The first one being December 10th. It's the budget hearing minutes. So if I could have a motion to approve those, please. Heather?
I'll make a motion to approve the December 10th, 2019 SAU budget hearing minutes.
Mr. Jared, I second.
Thank you, Heather. Thank you, Jared. Are there any comments, discussion? Seeing none, I'll take a roll call to approve those minutes. Tim Stetson,
Yes.
Heather Trapaz,
Yes.
Carrie Jenks,
Yes.
Dan Cloutier,
Yes.
Sam Perrin.
I'll abstain. I wasn't there.
Thanks, Sam. Ginny McKinney,
Yes.
Susanna.
I'll abstain. I wasn't there.
Thank you. Retta,
Yes.
Janelle,
Yes.
Ellen,
Yes.
Rob,
Yes.
Jared Talbot,
Yes.
Bill Schmidt,
Yes.
and Wendy Lambert. Yes. Okay. Thank you. Next is December 10th, 2019. Those are our board meeting minutes. So I'll need a motion to approve those. Ellen?
Move to approve the December 10th, 2019 SAU board minutes.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Mr. Jared, I'll second.
Thanks, Jared. Any discussion, comments? Seeing none, we'll do roll call. Tim Stetson,
Yes.
Heather Trapaz,
Yes.
Carrie Jenks,
Yes.
Dan Cloutier,
Yes.
Sam Perrin.
Abstain.
Thank you. Ginny,
Yes.
Susanna.
Abstain.
Thank you. Retta,
Yes.
Janelle,
Yes.
Ellen,
Yes.
Rob Witt,
Yes.
Jared,
Yes.
Bill Schmidt,
Yes.
and Wendy Lambert. Yes. Thank you. Next is the January 7th, 2020 SAU board meeting minutes. I'll need a motion. Ellen,
I move to approve the January 7th, 2020 SAU board meeting minutes.
thank you. Is there a second?
This is Jared. I'll second.
Thank you, Jared. Any comments, discussion? Seeing none. Oop. Was there any discussion? No? Thank you, sorry. We'll do roll call. Tim Stutson,
Yes.
Heather Trapaz,
Yes.
Carrie Jenks,
Yes.
Dan Cloutier,
Yes.
Sam,
Abstain.
thank you. Ginny,
Yes.
Susanna,
Abstain.
thank you. Retta,
Yes.
Janelle,
Yes.
Ellen,
Yes.
Rob,
Yes.
Jared,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
and Wendy, yes. Thank you. The last meeting minutes is March 15th, 2020. This is the emergency SAU board meeting. I'll need a motion to approve that. Ellen,
I move to approve the March 15th, 2020 emergency SAU board meeting minutes.
thank you. Is there a second?
It's Jared. I'll second.
Thank you, Jared. Any discussion, comments? Seeing none, we'll do roll call. Tim,
Yes.
thank you. Heather,
Yes.
Carrie Jenks,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Sam,
Yes.
thank you. Ginny,
Yes.
Susanna,
Abstain.
thank you. Retta,
Yes.
Janelle,
Yes.
Ellen,
Yes.
Rob,
Yes.
Jared,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
and Wendy, yes. Thank you. That was a lot of meeting minutes. Thanks, everybody. Scott, you're up for financials. First is manifest and vouchers.
All right, thank you. I'm going to share my desktop and I don't want to, usually this is something that Dan presents, and Dan, would you like to do it while I bring it up on the screen?
I can if you'd like.
Sure. So what I'll do is I'll share my desktop and we're
Sure.
going to look through 4 different manifest summaries starting in December, and just give me a second and I'll share it.
Sure. And what I have my copy in front of me as well. So, and I've got it nice and big. So we are looking at the same one. So what I would like to offer a motion that we put final approval on the December 2019 manifest in the total amount of $131,055.38.
Anyone? I can't see my whole screen.
This is Ellen. I'll second it.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second,
Jenny.
Ginny seconds. Thanks, Ginny.
Well, Dan made the motion and
Oh.
Ellen seconded it,
Sorry.
just for giggles. All right, what we had was payroll, taxes, the regular items for $122,000. We paid the Goffstown School District a grant distribution. Sorry, Scott, $4,792.50, and the New Hampshire School. I knew what this was. What's the SSA?
I think
School
it's, I think,
psychologists, administrators, or something. $1,600. It was dues for the administrators.
That's the New Hampshire School Administrators Association.
Right, I couldn't remember what double S meant.
should be double A.
Okay, NHSAA. All right, well, it's all good. That's what we have for December.
Perfect. Dan, how do you want to do this? Do you want to do this? Do you want to approve each manifest individually?
It would be very organized if we did.
Okay. Okay. Is there any discussion?
But The other thing would be, that's up to you, only because we have to do the roll call, and that's 15 each time, but that's the nature of what we have
Yeah,
to do. So,
that's fine.
okay.
I was just going to share, I'm sorry, Wendy, if you wanted to present all of them and do them as one batch, you could do that as well.
Right, I would have to modify the motion I made because I only made December. I would have to make the next 3 as well. So there'd be one motion of 4 manifests, technically.
The second is okay with that.
All right, let me further my initial motion and continuing approving a January manifest in the amount of $518,196.52 and approving a February 2020 manifest in the amount of $262,212.77 and approving the March 2020 manifest in the amount of $296,748.44. In January, we had payroll and the regular payroll items of $202,495. Made payments sped for grant distributions to Goffstown and New Boston, $232,285 to Goffstown, $18,222 to New Boston. We've spent money at core at the SAU level, $16,975, and LTR tutoring for $1,425. Some general expenses for Power School. E-finance, $34,940. That's annual cost for what we do for our accounting and some of the other items that we do. Primex, who is our property insurance, $4,492. We bought some oil from Dead River for $2,009. Xerox for our copier lease, it's a quarterly payment of $1,335. Teaching strategies, professional development, $1,075. And we put $1,000 in a postage machine. Moving on to February, the same payroll, taxes, $126,118. SPED activities for the Goffstown School District, $93,187. New Boston School District, $10,192. Boothby, $6,938. Apple for some iPads, $3,024. Edmonton SPED Exact Path Pilot Package license fees, $3,000. And core, $7,525 for SPED services. The crisis prevention and general expenses for NCO enhanced participation workbooks, $1,250. Beltronics has some pretty good walkie-talkies paid out of grant funds for $1,500. Lives and balance, $1,216. That's some advanced training, the registration fees to get that done. In March, we had some more payroll in the ancillary 403B contributions, retirement, health and dental, $156,005. Some more grant distribution, monthly Goffstown, $115,890. New Boston School District, $6282. Edmonton Ed Options Academy, $1,770, and core $3,675 for SPED services. We part of Scott's contract is we match some of his retirement. That's $3,400. Dude Solutions, which is the software that we use for maintenance activities to find out to get ahead of things. That was some training, $2,300. In the NHA SCA annual law conference, we had 8 people go for $2,000. And that represents the 4 months of activity since the last time you gave us permission to pay expenses until this meeting.
Any questions, comments?
Ellen?
Ellen?
Yeah. This went into the beginning, am I correct? This went into the beginning of the remote learning?
No.
It did not.
We haven't seen the computer. We haven't bought any computers at the remote learning side. We may have bought a couple of expenses for the SAU, but I don't think you've seen those yet.
No, but my question was the SPED services.
Yeah, those are, yeah, Ellen, those are typically at least 1 month behind. So when we
Okay.
pay in March, it's typically for February type expenses.
Okay, so those services did not happen during the remote learning yet.
That's correct. And a
Okay,
lot of
thank
it
you.
and you'll see this when we do both the Goffstown and the New Boston School Board meetings, is that almost all of these special ed providers are providing remote instruction to special ed students via remote learning, via Zoom meetings, etc. So a lot of them are still providing services.
Thank you.
Any other comments? No, seeing none. So we had a motion by Dan, seconded by Ellen. I'll just do a roll call. Tim Stetson,
Yes.
Heather Trapaz,
Yes.
Carrie Jenks,
Yeah.
Dan Cloutier,
Yes.
Sam Perrin,
Yes.
Ginny McKinnon,
Yes.
Susanna Buzzell.
Yes.
Am I saying that correctly?
You are.
Okay, thank you. Retta Chaffee,
Yes.
Janelle O'Brien,
Yes.
Ellen Vermarkowitz,
Yes.
Rob Witt,
Yes.
Jared Talbot,
Yes.
Bill Schmidt,
Yes.
and Wendy Lambert, yes. That's all of us. Thank you. Thanks, Dan.
You're welcome. Thank you.
The SAU expenditure report, 2019 and 2020, and unassigned fund balance, Scott?
I'm on mute. Sorry about that. So what you have before you is, and I also sent this out electronically, is the period 10 expenditure status report. And this is 5 pages long, and it lists all of the different account lines for the SAU. And if you look all the way to the right, what's the available balance? You're going to see a few areas that have negative balances, and that the lion's share of those negative balances are going to be addressed in some budget transfers that I would like you to approve a little bit further on in the agenda. One of the things that I did want to share with you is the last page, and the last page shows you what is the available balance of our budget. So of an SAU budget of a little over $2.2 million, there is about $82,000 and left in that as an available balance. In terms of what my expectations are, in terms of what we'll have as an available balance, right now I'm looking at probably somewhere between $50,000 and $60,000 will be the available balance of unspent budget items for SAU 19, and some of that will be attributed to some costs that we have with regard to some IT costs that we have due to the COVID-19 matter. But that's where we land. I also wanted to refresh your memory with respect. I'm going to take this down for a second. Last year when we did our 2019 audit, the SAU has a fund balance of around $292,000. So I wanted to also share that with you. So any monies that would be left over, unspent monies, would contribute to increasing that fund balance. So I just wanted to share that with you. We'll probably have a discussion at the June SAU meeting as to the amount of fund balance that might be used to offset each school district's assessment. And it's going to be my recommendation in June that whatever monies that we do have available that are left over, that would go automatically to reduce those assessments, which would reduce the tax rates for each respective district.
Wendy, if I may add to that, we don't always have an SAU board meeting in June. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. We do have to have an area meeting. So it might make sense, given the complexities of all the things we're dealing with, that we would definitely commit to having an SAU meeting in June. And I would concur with Mr. Gross. I think that our fund balance for the SAU is healthy. We do have a couple of large projects that are kind of still in the queue, so to speak. But at this point, I do think it's fair to say that that fund balance could come down a little bit and provide a little more tax relief for each of the respective districts. Mr. Gross and I had talked about that, and I think we're both in concurrence with that.
Okay. So can we have maybe Denise send out, if everybody's willing and able in June to have an SAU meeting? I think that does make sense. Maybe Denise could send out some possible dates. Thank you. Okay. Does anybody have any questions regarding the expenditure report? No? Seeing none. So we need authorization for the superintendent to act on commodity and capital project bids for 2020, 2021.
And if I can speak to that as well, 2 days ago, just watching the news and seeing how oil futures, the prices of oil futures are pretty much super low right now. I reached out to Dead River. Dead River has been our oil and propane provider for the SAU, as well as for New Boston and Goffstown for many years. In speaking with their account representative, I asked them, I said, what is the current price right now, seeing that oil prices are low? And he quoted me a price, and I don't know if I shared with you, Brian, it went down a nickel already. So it's down to $1.84 per gallon. We're currently budgeted at $2.17 per gallon. That's right now what we're paying. So we ordinarily go out to bid in late July, early August. It would be my recommendation that we do not go out to bid, that you would authorize me or the superintendent to take advantage of the very low oil prices that we have and try to lock in a rate that is right now it's 30 cents lower than what we're currently paying. And to take advantage of that, you do have the ability in all of your districts as well as the SAU to waive your bid process. And I would recommend, in light of the current situation, we're spending money on a lot of other things, costs that we can't. This is one that we can actually have some savings on. So it would be my recommendation to waive your bid process and allow the superintendent and/or myself to take advantage of oil pricing.
Wendy?
Ellen?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that we authorize the superintendent or his representative to enter into taking advantage of the current oil pricing.
Through negotiating a contracted price for the ensuing year?
Yes.
Correct.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second, Jenny.
Thank you, Jenny. Is there any comments? So seeing none, I'll do a roll call. Tim Stetson,
Yes.
Heather Trapaz,
Yes.
Harry Jenks,
Yes.
Dan Cloutier,
Yes.
Sam Perrin,
Yes.
Ginny McKinnon,
Yes.
Susanna Basil,
Yes.
Retta Chaffee,
Yes.
Janelle O'Brien,
Yes.
Ellen Vermarkowitz,
Yes.
Rob Witt,
Yes.
Jared Talbot,
Yes.
Bill Schmidt,
Yes.
Wendy Lambert, yes. Thank you.
Wendy,
Yes.
just before we go any further, I have got to comment and ask Dan, how does it feel to be on the bridge of the SS Enterprise?
You can't imagine the feeling.
I had to comment.
Thank you. So next, we need to authorize the superintendent or his designee to sign any and all available grants for the grant signature authorization. We typically do this at our April meeting.
Yeah, Wendy, if I can just add, this is, again, this is a typical authorization that this board grants. At this point, we're not anticipating any grants that we don't know about, but as we always know, there could be grants that we may pursue, such as safety grants or something of that nature. So at this point, we're not anticipating any grants, but we would ask for authorization if we felt that there was a grant program that we'd like to take advantage of, that we would like to be able to do that and have that authorization, please.
So moved. This is Ellen.
Ellen moved. Is there a second?
Dan will second that.
Thank you, Dan. Is there any discussion? Okay, seeing none. Tim Stetson,
Yes.
Heather Trapaz,
Yes.
Carrie Jenks,
Yes.
Dan Cloutier,
Yes.
Sam Perrin,
Yes.
Ginny McKinnon,
Yes.
Susanna Basil,
Yes.
Retta Chaffee,
Yes.
Janelle O'Brien,
Yes.
Ellen Vermarkowitz,
Yes.
Rob Witt,
Yes.
Jared Talbot,
Yes.
Bill Schmidt,
Yes.
and Wendy Lambert, yes. That's unanimous. Thank you.
I have a motion I'd like to make. Allow the SAU board treasurer to authorize the invoices to pay the bills and sign the checks until the next successful board meeting.
This is Jared. I'll second.
Thank you. And we typically do this as well. Are there any comments? Seeing none, I'll take a roll call. Tim Stetson,
Yes.
Heather Trapaz,
Yes.
Harry Jinks,
Yeah.
Dan Cloutier,
Yes.
Sam Perrin,
Yes.
Ginny McKinnon,
Yes.
Susanna Buzzell,
Yes.
Retta Chaffee,
Yes.
Janelle O'Brien,
Yes.
Ellen Vermarkowitz,
Yes.
Rob Witt,
Yes.
Jared Talbot,
Yes.
Bill Schmidt,
Yes.
Wendy Lambert, yes, that's unanimous. Thanks, Dan.
Thank you.
The SAU 19 proposed budget transfers over 5,000, Scott.
All right, thank you. I'm going to share with my desktop with you, and essentially there's going to be two budget transfers. One of them has already occurred, and it's informational. The other one pends your approval. So I spoke with the SAU chair, that was Heather, and with all of the things going on with our response to COVID-19 here at the SAU, we did not have laptops for our SAU staff, and essentially we're proceeding with having our folks having the technology that they need to work remotely. We had planned on doing this next year, but we're speeding. So what you're going to see here is I took the money from facility improvements, and basically what I shared with Heather is trying to swap what we were doing. So we'll buy the laptops and the monitors out of this year's budget, and then I'll do another budget transfer next year. Our plan was to do a replacement of some doors here at the SAU. So we'll just put that off, and then we'll do that in the next fiscal year. So this one here has already occurred. So I would just need a motion just to acknowledge that this occurred.
So
I'll
moved.
make that. Okay.
Or second. This is Ellen. I'll second it.
Yep. I just wanted to be a little more literal with the motion. That's all I was doing.
Go ahead.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion that we accept the transfer of $15,500 from the two various lines to. It's not to grant it, it's to affirm it, because it's already been done.
Mhm.
Ellen, you're seconding?
Yes.
Okay. Are there any comments? Seeing none, we'll do a roll call. Tim Stetson,
Yes.
Heather Trapaz,
Yes.
Harry Jinks,
Yeah.
Dan Cloutier,
Yes.
Sam Perrin,
Yes.
Ginny McKinnon,
Yes.
Susanna Buzzell,
Yes.
Retta Chaffee,
Yes.
Janelle O'Brien, Ellen Vermarkowitz,
Yes.
Rob Witt,
Yes.
Jared Talbot,
Yes.
Bill Schmidt,
Yes.
Wendy Lambert, yes, we're unanimous. Thank you.
All right, now I have a second one, and this is to be approved now. And what I'm going to show you on my screen is a whole host of budget transfers. And this, if you recall what I shared with you about 10 minutes ago, the negative columns that you saw, just trying to make more sense of the budget when we're looking at it, where our expenses are going. I'm going to share with you the negatives are where we need to make up those funds. So you'll see here that we have a negative of $10,481 in district salaries. And I am proposing to take it from health insurance, which there was a change in someone's health plan and fiscal services, as well as secretary salaries, where we saw a slight decrease. So that's the first one. The second one is a $1,300 transfer from our facilities budget to the other professional services. And our next one deals with a shortage of other support salaries, and I'm trying to keep it in the same family. This one was our support salaries. This one was our professional salaries. With regard to FICA, we had a negative balance of 772, so I'm taking it from another line, and then the list goes on. The one thing that I do want to share with you is the one that's down here, and that is for district salaries. Gary Geroliman, who is our former IT director, has been helping both districts with our IT needs due to the COVID-19 response. He was initially helping Steve out during the transition, but Gary has just been an invaluable resource to the SAU and to both school districts in terms of helping Steve out on a wide variety of IT needs. And I know that the superintendent has spoken at both school board meetings in terms of the incredible work that Steve Bourget has done, and that is so true. But Gary has also been, I've worked with Gary on updating websites, many of our FAQs, all of the RFPs that for the New Boston envelope, building envelope project, as well as the kindergarten project, all that stuff Gary did. So this is going to cover that shortage in that particular line. So that the total budget transfer that I'm recommending is in the amount of $20,050.43. And again, it's for the April 15th budget transfers. There's no number associated with it.
Inquiry.
Yes.
The FICA Medicare is a set percentage of salaries within that same grouping. Did we do a transfer to additional staff services at one point in time where this would have been?
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that, because that's the first time that I've seen here at the SAU where we've had that. And I'd have to investigate that one a little bit more. It's not a huge amount, but we see that typically at your school boards, at your school districts, because we have people moving out of different roles and they were previously budgeted for a certain amount. So I have to check into that particular one to see what generated it. But I thought the same thing.
Yeah, that reflects about a $10,100
Yep.
increase in salaries that are being paid, and you unless you overpaid and had to move money to overpaid, that shouldn't happen.
Yeah. So that's something that I do have to take a look at.
Okay, we'll look forward to your report in a future meeting. In the meantime, I can offer a motion if you'd like.
Thanks, Dan.
I'd like to motion that we approve the budget transfer request dated April 15th, 2020, in the total amount of $20,050.43.
Is there a second?
Second, Ginny.
Thank you, Ginny. Is there?
Inquiry.
Yes. Yep. Go ahead,
Just
Jared.
a question, Scott. When we're looking at the transfers, it looks like you're pulling something labeled new machinery. Is that from a maintenance line, or are we actually not purchasing something that we had planned to this year?
It's from a maintenance line.
Okay, so it's
just the way it's just the title of the title of it, Jared. But it is from a maintenance line. It's not like we were purchasing anything in particular.
And to follow up, there was another line right above it about not the former IT director, but for staff of about $10,000. Did we have an overage that we need to cover because of what's occurred, or what was really the cause of that?
Well, if you recall, this one is a lot of this is attributable to Gary Geroliman as well, because we did not originally budget for that, when he retired and Steve came on board. So that represents his assistance to the district during that that transition period.
Thank you.
Jared, if I may add to that, Gary Geroliman's contributions continue to be rather significant. We're using Gary in a number of sort of project investigations that we had never even anticipated. So right now, we would definitely need to keep Gary in. He's helping our IT department. and they're already pretty short-staffed as it is. So we would anticipate that during this COVID-19 closure, that Gary would continue to help us on a part-time basis, but really he is money well spent.
Thank you. Are there any other comments? Okay, seeing none. That was a motion made by Dan and seconded by Ginny. So I'll take a roll call. Tim Stetson,
Yes.
Heather Trapaz,
Yes.
Carrie Jenks, Dan Cloutier,
Yes.
Sam Perrin,
Yes.
Ginny McKinnon,
Yes.
Susanna Buzzell,
Yes.
Retta Shafi,
Yes.
Janelle O'Brien,
Yes.
Ellen Vermarkowitz,
Yes.
Rob Witt,
Yes.
Jared Talbot,
Yes.
Bill Schmidt,
Yes.
Wendy Lambert. Yes, we're unanimous. Thank you. So we also need to have the authorization to make budget transfers during the summer. So we need a motion for that as well.
Wendy, if I could just clarify, it's to conduct all business. It's the paying of the bills. It's beyond just budget transfers.
Okay.
Just as a question, if we're having a meeting in June, should we be postponing this vote until that point?
We could, at this point, the meeting is not scheduled and has not been executed. So if you wanted to perhaps consider making a motion contingent upon if there was not an SAU board meeting in June, not to make it more complicated than it needs to be, but if we decided that we didn't need to or didn't have a reason to have a meeting, that this would be important for us to still have.
Do you have a favorite way you'd like to make that that time frame, Jared?
Well, I was just trying to construct in my head the verbiage that you would be looking for, Dan, in order to get this through. I would prefer to reaffirm this in the June timeframe if we have a meeting. That's my opinion. You know, not to jump the gun.
You can always make the actual motion itself that's contingent on that.
Yes.
And that's what I was trying to structure in my head, what that motion would look like.
Okay, let me try this. I'd like to make a motion. We authorize the SAU to continue to conduct business during the summer of 2020, which would need to be reaffirmed if we have a successful meeting between now and the summer. That work?
Sounds good.
I'll second that.
Thanks, Jared. Are there any questions, discussion? Seeing none, I'll take a roll call. Tim Stetson.
Yes.
Thank you. Heather Trapaz.
Yes.
Carrie Jenks. You're on mute, Carrie. Thank you. Dan Cloutier,
Yes.
Sam Perrin,
Yes.
Ginny McKinnon,
Yes.
Susanna Buzzell,
Yes.
Retta Chaffee,
Yes.
Janelle O'Brien,
Yes.
Ellen Vermarkowitz,
Yes.
Rob Witt,
Yes.
Jared Talbot,
Yes.
Bill Schmidt,
Yes.
Wendy Lambert. Yes, we're unanimous. Thank you. So, Brian, I think that we did the proposed budget transfers over 5,000. Dan made that motion for the total of $20,050.43, but we didn't authorize to make budget transfers during the summer. That's
So
on the agenda. Do we not need to do that?
I think we're okay for now, given the authorization that the SAU board has already given me to oversee the operation of the SAU. I think we absolutely will plan to have that meeting in June, and I think it'll be okay.
Okay, thank you. Sure.
And just for giggles, Wendy, the budget ends on June 30th. And I don't know if we want to start making budget transfers on July 2nd.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's just one of those fiscal things.
Okay. All right. Moving on. Authorization of the superintendent to hire as needed between SAU board meetings. We need a motion for that.
So moved, Ellen.
Thank you, Ellen. Is there a second?
Second, Ginny.
Thank you, Jenny. Any questions, comments?
Do we have any current openings, Brian?
We don't. We do have one thing that we will share during the staffing report at the very end of the meeting, Dan. But as of right now, we do not have any SAU vacancies or have any anticipated vacancies.
Any other comments? Seeing none, I'll do roll call. Tim Stetson,
Yes.
Heather Trapass,
Yes.
Carrie Jenks. Sorry, Carrie, did you say yes? Okay. Dan Cloutier,
Yes.
Sam Perrin,
Yes.
Jenny McKinnon,
Yes.
Susanna Buzzell,
Yes.
Retta Chaffee,
Yes.
Janelle O'Brien,
Yes.
Ellen Vermarkowitz,
Yes.
Rob Witt,
Yes.
Jared Talbot,
Yes.
Bill Schmidt,
Yes.
and Wendy Lambert. Yes, we're unanimous. Thank you. Superintendent's recommendation regarding central office summer hours, which is what we typically do each year. We need an authorization. Brian, can you speak to the hours that those
Yeah, so
are?
as a simplistic overview, for the last 26 years, there are 6 weeks in the summer that the SAU staff work a condensed week. Typically, it's a Monday through Thursday, kind of a 10-hour day instead of a typical traditional 40-hour week. And we've done that now for almost 3 decades. So we would ask for that authorization again, please.
This is Ellen. So moved.
Thanks, Ellen. Is there a second?
Second, Ginny.
Heather.
Go ahead, Heather.
Heather, you're seconded.
Yes.
Are there any comments? No, seeing none. I'll do a roll call. Tim Stetson,
Yes.
Heather Trapass,
Yes.
Carrie Jenks, Dan Cloutier,
Yes.
Sam Perrin,
Yes.
Jenny McKinnon,
Yes.
Susanna Buzzell,
Yes.
Retta Chaffee,
Yes.
Janelle O'Brien,
Yes.
Ellen Vermarkowitz,
Yes.
Rob Witt,
Yes.
Jared Talbot,
Yes.
Bill Schmidt,
Yes.
Wendy Lambert. Yes, we're unanimous. On anticipated federal programs and entitlements, I don't know if we got that handout.
No, so I'll give just a brief introduction to this, if I may, Wendy.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Typically, we provide an overview of what we anticipate for federal grant funds, and because Mrs. Berry is with us, I will ask her to speak to this. And we have the current FY20 grant allocation numbers that she can review, and then she can give sort of a little bit of an anticipated speculation as to what we expect to receive. And she can also answer any questions of how these funds are used. Mrs. Berry?
I think she's on mute. Hold on. a
Help,
minute.
help, Scott.
She's off now.
How's that?
Yeah.
You good? Oh, the mute button's
You-
gotten us all tonight.
You really can't mute MC if you know her. Just saying.
Thank you, Scott.
What?
So what is atypical for us this year, along with pretty much everything else, is that we have not been provided with specific grant allocations. Normally, we have projected allocations for the entitlement grants, and we provide you with a worksheet or a document. You're meeting again in June. My anticipation is that we'll have firmer numbers for you, and we'll be able to provide that information at that time. We've been advised to expect roughly 20% or so of a decrease, pretty much across the board in the grant allocations. Scott, I don't know if you had anticipated speaking to the CARES, if you've spoken to at the local school board level about those grant dollars and what that is potentially going to bring to us. Currently for FY20, our allocations for Title I ran about $330,000. We used that money to provide 3 full-time interventionists, Title I teachers at Bartlett, and a half-time interventionist at Mountain View Middle School, Mr. Bousquet, in grade 5. Title II, which is the professional development money that we use, we have about $99,000 for FY20. Those are 2-year grants. Title I is a 1-year grant. In order to provide, PD in terms of workshops, activities, a lot of embedded PD for our staff. And we're going to be looking at some creative things in this remote learning environment. Title III, which supports our ESL students, we had about $6,500 for this year. And for Title IV, which is a grant that we used actually part of it this year to do the Know and Tell mandated reporter training for all of our staff in both New Boston and Goffstown, as well as we purchased musical instruments. We are able to use those dollars a little more flexibly this year in response to COVID-19 and anticipate using the $50,000 that we have for that for technology. In New Boston, the allocation for Title I for this year was about $35,000, and that funds a half-time math interventionist. Title II, again, professional development was about $20,000. Title IV is about $11,000. So we will provide you with more of an update looking at what we think we're going to have for FY21, hopefully at the June meeting.
Does anybody have any questions? Thank you, MC.
You're welcome.
No, seeing none. Okay. Okay, more to come in June. Thank you. Annual review of administrative regulations, policy BFCA.
Yeah, so your policy BFCA, and I'll read this, it's the board review of administrative regulations that you, thank you, Mr. Gross, well done. The board shall annually receive a report of any changes in rules and regulations developed by the superintendent of schools for implementation of board policies at the spring meeting. There's nothing of note to share this evening with respect to this, although as the board is aware, you did give me authorization to respond to the need for potential policy changes or any other alterations during the COVID-19 situation. I think the only thing I'd share, Mr. Gross had shared that we were looking at a few computer purchases so that people could work remotely. We've had a few increases in the cost for supplemental IT support for Mr. Gerolman. And apart from that, I wouldn't identify any other particular policy or regulation changes at this time. Scott or Mrs. Moran, would you add anything to that, or Mrs. Berry?
No.
That's it then, thank you.
Thank you. Our June joint area board meeting date discussion. So they are new. Sorry, thought I had that paperwork here. The can you guys help me? Carrie and Bill are for New Boston for the area, and for Goffstown. Who's on the Goffstown area?
Is Susanna,
Dan
and Ginny.
Okay. So this is I believe this is the full both boards meeting. The January meeting is for the area, the area committee, and then this June meeting is for both.
Yeah, it's the entire boards, and I'm wondering if we're talking about a June, since we have to have a June area meeting anyway, we could have the SAU meeting right after. I mean, it makes a lot of sense.
I would agree.
I agree
Yeah.
with that. That's a
Yeah,
good
this-
idea.
Yeah, this is a provision number 8 of the joint area board meeting.
Thanks, Dan. So Denise, if you don't mind sending out some dates that might work for everybody, that would be great. Thank you. Deputy Treasurer approval.
Any volunteers? I don't see any hands yet. Oh, there's a Jared.
Dan, can you kind of explain this?
Sure. What happens is through and Scott can jump in whenever he wants. Through our auditors, we're thinking about it. You were kind enough to reelect me to be the district treasurer for another year. What I do is whenever, in fact, I just got an email today, we go in, we look at the schedule of invoices they want to do. I approve them. Once the checks get written, I go to the SAU and I look at all the invoices. I look at the payments and I see if they all make sense. If they make sense, great. If they don't, I usually bug somebody about what's this, why is it here? And then when we have the meeting, we present it to you guys for final authority for the payment. In case the treasurer is unavailable, you really want to have a legal representative that you guys have authorized to be able to be a secondary method of paying the bills, rather than just have a motion that kind of says, hey, let it happen, and if the treasurer ever decides they want to do their job, then fine. That's basically what it's about. So, and I don't think in the 2 years prior, Fred actually had to step to the plate at all. I mean, can you remember, did you ever need it, Scott? I think I've been available, so, but it's just in case, you never know.
Yeah, it's always good to have a deputy in the event that Dan could not proceed with his duties. So.
Okay, thank you, Jared, for volunteering. Do you need a motion or a?
Yeah, we do. I'd like to nominate, and I'd like to make a motion that we appoint Jared Talbot as the deputy SAU 19 treasurer.
Seconded.
Tim Stetson is seconding that. Any discussion? Jared, I saw the thumbs up. You're okay with that?
Yeah, I have full faith in Dan that he's never going to leave us for this year. So.
Okay, thank you. I'll do roll call. Heather Trapaz, Tim, you went to the bottom. Heather?
Yes.
Carrie Jenks? Dan Cloutier?
Yes.
Sam Perrin?
Yes.
Ginny McKinnon? Susanna Buzzell?
Yes.
Retta Chaffee?
Yes.
Janelle O'Brien?
Yes.
Ellen Vermarkowitz? Ellen, was that a yes? Sorry.
Well, it's on, yeah, yes.
Thank you. Tim Stetson?
Yes.
Rob Witt?
Yes.
Jared Talbot? Bill Schmidt?
Yes.
Wendy Lambert, yes, we're unanimous. Thank you. Next is April vacation discussion. So I wanted to thank the Goffstown Board for hearing the New Boston Board's comments and suggestions and thoughts with regard to this. I appreciate that, Brian, for you suggesting at the Goffstown Board meeting. So I don't know how you guys want to handle this. I don't know if we just want to go one by one and just share our thoughts.
If I may, Wendy, I'd like to provide a little bit of an introduction and a little bit of an overview. I think there's some additional supplemental information that the board might want to see, as well as I'd like to share the survey results. So the first thing, and similar to how Mr. Gross has been doing this, I'd like to share my desktop as well. Scott, if you could enable me to do that. I had that earlier and it looks like I maybe don't anymore.
If you move your mouse and hit that little green arrow, is that the same? Unless you're on an Apple.
You have it now. You're the host.
I had it earlier. Okay.
There you
Okay,
go.
the first thing I'd like to share with you is this is a document that I have developed. I'd like to start by giving a little context to this. When we continue to have meetings every week with all superintendents and stakeholders, including Commissioner Edelblue, and Daryl Lockwood, who many of you know, has consistently asked the question, what conditions would need to be satisfied before we could return to school? And I think it's important to talk about this before we talk about April vacation. So just to provide a little context, I'd like to have a general discussion about our ability to return to school and what safety considerations would need to be made, and then lead into the April vacation discussion. So when Dr. Lockwood has asked that question, there's been no answer. And today on a call, Commissioner Edelblue had shared a couple things. The first was which it looks increasingly likely that Governor Sununu is going to close schools for the year. Now, as I've said in the past, if he does not do so, that is still a local decision. So I think at this point, I would take a little bit of a wait and see what Governor Sununu's recommendation will be. Commissioner Edelblue seemed to indicate that we should expect an answer with respect to the closure of school for the year, this school year, perhaps as early as Friday. But as Daryl had talked about, what would the criteria be? I developed some. So at this point, I do want to share that I've developed this without any guidance from any public health officials. The Center for Disease Control has said that they are working on this for schools across the country, but to date we have seen none. And I heard today that the public health officials and the emergency response team in New Hampshire was also working on this. So in the absence of seeing any criteria at all, I went ahead and identified what I would need to see as criteria in order to give both boards my approval for the safety of our faculty, our staff, as well as our students and families. So not to spend a lot of time on this, and again, this is nothing that I'm presenting as any kind of a political lean, but when I think about what would I want to see before I can say to school boards, it's safe to reopen schools, this is the criteria that I have developed thus far. And again, without guidance from federal or state public health officials, because it has not been provided. So I'll just review this and everyone can read it for themselves. But the first thing I'd like to see is a considerable substantial reduction in stabilization, so-called flattening of the curve. And we need to think about this regionally as well as nationally. When we think about living in New England, it's important for all of you to know, and I'm going to do this from memory, but the state of Maine sees about 36 million visitors a year. The state of New Hampshire sees about 17 million, and the state of Vermont sees about 13 million visitors a year. And these are folks coming from international destinations as well as regional. So when we think about right now with the United States of America having over 600,000 positive cases of COVID-19, the epicenter in the United States remains New York, in New York City specifically. So if we think that we're only a 4 or 5 hour drive from New York City, we really have to look at this on a regional basis. Number two, I would need to have a system where town and school officials are notified of positive cases and the quarantine status. We could potentially have families that are in current diagnosis of COVID-19, including children, and we wouldn't necessarily know or have any information if people should be quarantined. Number three, an immunization at this point would be a game changer. And I think increasingly it looks more and more likely that that immunization is going to be a requirement for our true moving past this pandemic. Number four, I would want to see a comprehensive system of testing, contact tracing, and quarantining, including enforcement. There's also a movement to look at widespread mass testing, including blood tests that would identify the antibodies that would signify that someone had already been exposed to and recovered from COVID-19. Number 5, our healthcare system would have to be sufficiently able to respond to their needs, including PPE, personal protective equipment, as well as other equipment like ventilators. Number 6, we would have a system to identify high-risk individuals and families that continue to be potentially exposed. So for example, our children who live in families, and many thanks to moms and dads that are healthcare workers, doctors, nurses, and all the other folks that are working so hard to keep us all safe during this pandemic. But we have to recognize that under the current circumstances, we have a lot of people who are more exposed than others. There are many that are able to observe the governor's stay-at-home order and are able to work remotely, and there are some that are not able to do that. And as such, there are different levels of potential exposure that we need to be aware of. Number 7, no travel-related restrictions domestically or internationally. Number 8, no Center for Disease Control or New Hampshire-specific restriction on group sizes. And everyone knows at this point the restriction on group size is 10. So we have 1,200 students almost at Goffstown High School. We have 900 students at Mountain View Middle School. In order to reopen school, I would say this year or in the fall, this criteria would be equally as important. We would need to see a lifting of restrictions on group sizes. Number 9, sufficient classroom substitute coverage for staff absences. I think both boards are aware that we continue to struggle with respect to finding appropriate substitute coverage in our schools. That would likely continue to be the circumstance when in fact we do get back to school. Number 10, schools would need to have sufficient PPE, personal protective equipment, as well as the capacity to conduct things like temperature screening or other biological screenings. I'm not looking to implement anything at this point, but we are, I think, all aware that children, many children are not as at risk of COVID-19 or don't perhaps have the same health repercussions. And there are many people and scientists who believe that children can be asymptomatic spreaders of COVID-19. One of the indicators, of course, would be the presence of a fever. So the idea that we would potentially be looking at some kind of a temperature screening for students is something that's being evaluated nationally as well as internationally. And lastly, number 11, I would share with the board that if in fact we return to school this year, that we do not have the capacity to run 2 parallel models. If we had schools that were able to open, say, for example, the last weekend of May, I suspect that I would have probably 30 to 40 or more % of parents that would not send their kids back to school. And our ability to provide in-class, in brick and mortar structure education, as well as remote instruction, does not exist. So in total, I will share with the SAU board and both of the boards respectively. I think it is incredibly unlikely that we will be returning to school this year. I know that's disappointing for many people, including teachers, parents, and students. But I think given the public health circumstances, I actually think there is 0% chance that we will be back. I would encourage us to wait for Governor Sununu. I'd like to give him the time, out of respect to the governor, to make that determination. If he does not do so, I do want both boards to know that is a local decision, and I will have recommendations for each of your boards next week. So at this point, I would leave it there. I would also share that I think we need to think about a tiered re-entry model, and that the likelihood of going from our current circumstances, with respect to COVID-19, social distancing, stay-at-home orders, and restrictions, to school being back open, business as usual, is incredibly unlikely. I think we need to think about a tiered model that could include perhaps grades going back a certain percentage at a time, classes being split. There's going to be a lot of considerations that we're going to have. So I do want the board to be aware that that at this point, there is no public guidance, and I took it upon myself to develop this. I continue to speak with other superintendents, and Daryl Lockwood. Daryl had shared a couple of his thoughts with me, and some of those items that I shared came from Daryl. So before I continue talking about April vacation, I might pause there and ask if there are any questions that any board members may have with respect to this criteria.
It's a lot. Are there any comments or questions?
think
So is this,
this
oh,
is-
sorry.
Bill, go ahead. Bill? Did you have any comments?
Yeah, sorry. I was just wondering, is this list like, you have to meet all of them, some of them, one of them? What are we looking at here?
Well, Bill, at this point, first of all, I would say I am not a public health official. This is not my area of expertise or experience. I would look to our doctors, our nurses, our public health officials. But right now, we have been provided with no guidance at the federal level or the state level with how schools would begin to consider reopening. And I've continued to sort of ask that question, so I thought I would just take a shot at developing a draft of that. Again, I would respectfully wait for Governor Sununu to make a decision, but my recommendation is until these 11 elements are codified by public health official or substantiated and justified, I could not give any school board member assurance that our schools will be safe, would be safe for our students, our faculties, or our families.
Wendy?
Yes, Retta?
I just wanted to say thank you, Brian, for putting this list together. I think it's a really complex situation, and I've been thinking about it a lot and coming to some similar conclusions, but not wanting to be in the position that you're in to have to make some final decision. And I think this is really good for the community to be able to see too, to understand all the different levels that you have to consider, because it'll be good for a week and then all of a sudden it could go bad quickly. So I think this is at least a good place for all of us to understand some of the areas that we need to be keeping our eyes on and asking questions about, and looking to leadership locally, nationally, and watching how things are going. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions I can answer about this? And again, I would share that I would look for guidance. I will tell all board members that school administrators are looking for this guidance from our national and state officials. This is not my area of expertise. I don't know if I've sufficiently captured all the elements that I should, but in the absence of having that leadership, I went ahead and did this. So the next thing I would share with you is we did a survey regarding April vacation. So let me transition into that. So this gives kind of a brief overview, and I'd like to thank Kate for her work in putting the survey together, as well as compiling the results. I didn't want to make this survey more complicated than it needed to be. So I hesitated to not include different scenarios of if April vacation were to be eliminated, that this would be the last day of school, or if we did a number of long weekends, that this is what the last day of school would be. So let me give just a general overview, and then I'll share with you revised calendars for each of the respective districts. So in total, Goffstown and New Boston together, we had 2,658 or so surveys, and the number of people that would like to see April vacation occur as scheduled, the no was overwhelming, 2,043 versus 615. So if we just take that question and then look at Goffstown, the breakdown was 1,477 to 426, and in New Boston, it was 543 to 185. So just that piece, I think it's really clear to everyone that we will, in all likelihood, continue to be in a remote learning model for the remainder of the school year. And as such, it likely makes good sense, and I think overwhelming consensus to work through April vacation.
Hey, Brian, can you go to the second page, please? You went a little too fast there. Thank you.
So this second page, Tim, this is just the New Boston folks. And so you can see they had about 728, 730 surveys, and 543 to 185 to not observe April vacation. I do want to recognize the public comment that we received, and Mrs. Charles, who is a great library media specialist for us and a neighbor of mine. I always like to point out that, you know, I think she had really good points. I think people are taxed. I think people are overwhelmed. I think people are anxious. I think people are having a really hard time with this. And I think that that's not necessarily unique or specific to public education. It is, in fact, a global pandemic. I think, you know, everyone on the planet is being you know, impacted by this and affected by this. So I do recognize that people really could use a break, but part of the mindset would be to work through April vacation. And at this point, the second question I asked was about having so-called kind of a long weekend in May. And I did not clarify, I will clarify now, any day we're not in school does not count as one of our 180 days. So if we take an extra day for Memorial Day weekend, that day gets added to the calendar. If we take every Friday off in May, those days get added to the calendar. So let me share, and by the way, this question was split about 50-50. I would share that some teachers did not recognize that if we took long weekends in May, that they would have to make the dates up. So I do think that even though it's about 50-50 on this question, as you can see from the survey results, that I think it would be likely a little not quite 50-50 if I would have said you have to make those days up and you're going to push the last day of school out in June. Now, it's probably before I show you the proposed calendars, there's one other thing that I'd like to share. School districts have two different models that we can have a school year. One is based on hours and one is based on days. We have been historically a days-based calendar. There are some school districts that are changing from a days-based calendar to an hours-based calendar. Consistent with New Hampshire law, as well as the minimum standards, ED 306, we have to satisfy a certain number of hours for elementary, middle, and high school. We exceed those hours, as do most school districts. There are some schools that are rushing to finish their school year as fast as they can in the interest of providing relief to families and relief to teachers and staff that are providing remote learning and remote instruction. I do want to be clear, I do not support shortening the school year. I have been, if nothing else, consistent on this. I do believe in a longer school day, a longer school year. So I do not support the idea of shaving days off the calendar by shifting from days to hours. if we did so, I could give you a number of scenarios, but we would be able to shave a fair number of days off the calendar. I heard, I think yesterday, that the Rochester School District announced that they were doing this, and they're getting out on May 15th, is what I saw in the newspaper, in the Union Leader. So from May 15th until sometime around Labor Day, those students are not going to be in school. I do not think that's good for kids. I don't think that's good for families. And I think that that creates a hardship for kids as learners when they come back in the fall, provided we're able to do so safely. So that could be something that if the board, if either board wanted to talk about that, and this did come up with the New Boston board at our last meeting, I would welcome conversations. I can share more specific information about the hours requirements, or if boards wanted to talk about this next week, you could do so as well. So I'll pause there and see if there are any questions, and then I'll show you a couple of examples of the school calendar if we were to eliminate April vacation.
Somebody, and does anyone have any questions?
Dan will pipe in.
Thank you.
If we do not do the 5 days, we have roughly 40 days of physical school starting tomorrow through the early release day. It's a count of 40 days. If we reduce it by the 5 days of April vacation that we don't have, then early release, according to our schedule, is June 11th. Oh,
Correct.
you've already got it there by taking out the April vacation.
So this is the Goffstown calendar without April vacation. And New Boston's, I can also show you it's the same. The only difference is New Boston teachers would have a workshop day on the 12th. So without April vacation and without taking any so-called long weekends between now and the end of the school year, Mr. Cloutier is correct. We would get out on the 11th of June. Now, I do want to talk just very briefly, Wendy, if I may, about end of the year celebrations, rituals. We have a lot of stuff that we do, folks. So everything from graduation to promotion ceremonies for New Boston students in 6th grade, Mountain View 8th graders. We do kind of a promotion for our kindergartners, our little guys, as well as things like athletic banquets, senior scholarship night, baccalaureate. All of those things right now are potentially, and not even potentially, are in fact in jeopardy. I do want to share with the SAU board that we've got a pretty good group that's starting to consider what some alternatives to those traditional ceremonies, celebrations, and rituals would be. I'm not signaling anything here, and I don't want to sound alarmist, but we're looking at what a virtual graduation would look like. We're looking at what other options for things like award ceremonies, student recognitions, scholarships. At this point, we're really starting to look at what those options could look like virtually. We're not quite there yet, but I do want the boards to know that we have been planning those things. So this is the Goffstown calendar, and I would share the New Boston calendar here. So it's essentially identical with the addition of a teacher workshop day at the end of the year. So really that's, I think at this point, that's really all I have to share with respect to that. My recommendation would be to work through April vacation, to not take any long weekends. If families decide that they want or need to do that, I will honor that. I've continued to give families leverage that as they're struggling with remote learning, And remember, folks, this looks really different for younger children and older children. My kids are older. They're both high school kids. They both have their own laptops, and they're pretty independent. So for me, this is not nearly the same struggle as it is if I had multiple young children and I was trying to work at home. So I do want to always recognize the significant sacrifice that our families are making, how hard this is for all of us, whether it's providing individual attention to our kids, to having sufficient materials, bandwidth. That's something that I've had a lot of parents reach out to me that their bandwidth is really a challenge. But I think at this point, our best course forward is to work through April vacation, keep the schedule for the next approximately 7 or so weeks, and finish strong on the 11th of June. And hopefully, if the criteria or other criteria that public health officials may determine relevant will be satisfied, and we'll be able to welcome kids back at the end of August.
Brian, I appreciate everything you've said. Thank you. And I'm empathetic to both sides. With you saying that families are able to take weekends, long weekends to kind of get that reprieve. I'm concerned about teachers. I know that teachers, many of them have their own children and are working, all day, and then they have to teach their own children afterwards. I feel like most of them feel the need to respond to families who are trying to get in touch with them at night, maybe after work or on the weekend. So, they're working all week, all weekend. So I'm just concerned about burnout for teachers. I know that families, like you said, are struggling. There's, both mom and dad are working during the day. So there's older siblings taking care of the younger siblings, feeding them, helping with their schoolwork on top of their own. So I think that there are a lot of people who are struggling, and although some people want to work through, it's more of a mental health issue for me. And so, whether it's a long weekend and taking a chunk out just so people can catch their breath, I just think it's really important to recognize those people that are struggling, including teachers.
I respect that, Wendy. I don't disagree at all. I think that the impact on teachers has been tremendous. I would say, and I would continue to share, I couldn't be more proud of the work that our teachers have done. I think that, given the fact that we basically received notification on a Sunday that the very next day we would be all schools would be closed. I think people are probably pretty surprised and hopefully impressed with how quickly public education has been able to pivot and to adapt, change, and evolve into this new requirement during the pandemic. I couldn't be more proud of our teachers. I just think at this point, people have really settled into a rhythm. So while Wendy, I totally agree with you that people need a break, I'm not so sure, apart from me asking Mr. Bourget to shut off teachers' access and email accounts, I'm just not convinced if we took the April vacation that our teachers would really truly be able to stop. And, other factors of consideration, families can't go anywhere. They can't do anything. And just keeping that routine and those good habits, I see as being critically important. I think globally, all of our collective individual and collective mental health is challenged, is compromised. I think that we'll continue to consider the implications of these truly remarkable times for the rest of our lives. So I think you're right. I think people are overwhelmed. I think they're anxious. I think they're depressed. I think they feel isolated. I think it's truly just an incredible difficulty for all of us. I agree with that.
Ellen? I think you're on mute. Can't hear you. Just try talking now. She's still on mute.
Scott's on mute as well.
Brian, I can't, you're the host. I can't unmute her. You have to do it.
So Scott, change me back.
I think you have to do that, but yeah, you have to do it. Under more. If you click on your name, it should say more, then you can.
Oh boy.
The 3 ellipses that are on your picture.
Yeah.
I see it. I'm not seeing more. All right. How do I unmute her? Just click on it?
Yeah, you click on the unmute.
I got her.
Right.
There you go, Ellen.
Hey, here I am. Okay. I agree with everything everybody's been saying. I think there's also something to be said for keeping the kids in the routine they're in and not interrupted for a break. I like the idea of working through the April break. One of the items on the list that you made, Brian, was to have adequate subs. I'm not so sure that's something we want to hold up on, since even without the virus, we don't have enough subs. Although, you know, to hold up whether we go back to school in the fall or not, I don't know. Does anybody know if the state of New Hampshire is doing testing to get the numbers, to have accurate data to look at whether it's going up or down or
Yes,
what?
every state is testing for COVID-19.
Where?
Hospitals, anywhere.
So a person who wants to be tested, you have to go there where people are sick and get tested?
I believe you have to be referred.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're not doing mass testing
No.
for the data. Okay, so we're not going to have that type of data. Okay. I like the idea of going on through and getting out early and hoping this stuff starts to get alleviated.
Wendy, this is Jared, if I may. I'd like to make a motion that we cancel April vacation as provided.
Seconded.
I'm pretty sure that has to be done by each school board individually.
I think so.
I think to Jared's point, if I may, Wendy, I think this board, we have consistently used this forum for topics of significance that impact both boards. I think I think Jared's motion could be that it would be the position of the SAU 19 board that the Goffstown School Board and the New Boston School Board will take this under advisement. But I think that you could make a symbolic motion with respect to April vacation here.
I'll amend my motion that we recommend as an SAU board to our town boards, school boards, to cancel April vacation as it's currently scheduled.
This is Ellen. I second that.
Is there any other discussion?
Yes, Wendy, before we do a roll call, Brian, I had a couple of questions. You had mentioned if parents decide to opt out for the day or a couple of days. I've had a lot of parents ask how they would do that and if their child is then required to make up that work that they have missed.
So one of the things that I had originally considered was the possibility of having a so-called optional week that could be providing enrichment activities, enhancement activities. And the more that I thought about that, that's just going to create a remarkable amount of tension with older children. I think our elementary kids would do what we ask them to do. I'm pretty sure that my 15-and-a-half-year-old would have a different opinion if he somehow thought the school week was optional. So during the remote learning environment, we have to keep track of student attendance, but there aren't attendance requirement restrictions that are being imposed upon us. So for example, if a if a family made the individual decision that they were going to take a Friday off, I would think that they would notify the teachers, and that we would try to find kind of a compromise on what that would look like. I'm really not recommending this in terms of encouraging families to do so, but I think families have and need to continue to have the ultimate authority for oversight of what their kids are going through, what their families are going through. And I just want to be clear, I continue to get a pretty significant paradox of comments from parents. I hear all the time that there's too much work, there are too many requirements, there are too many hours that students are putting in. And then paradoxically, I hear it's not enough, there's not enough time, there's not enough rigor and enforcement. So we need to recognize that we have parents on a continuum and students on a continuum with respect to how they're able to comply with remote learning. So I think, Heather, I would just kind of say parents always have that right. And not that I'm encouraging it, but if a family were to say, we're going to take a Friday off and we're going to go skiing, that's a choice that a family can make. Not
Thank
that
you,
there's any
Brian.
snow to be had.
Right, there's no snow.
But just
All
as
right,
an
thank you.
example.
Retta, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. I wanted to go back to the comment or the question that you had asked, and really direct it to Brian specifically about the mental well-being of the teachers, because they are, they could take sick days, but they're there, and they're being required to be there 5 days a week. And if there's any thought about what we can do to support them during this time, because they're doing their job, but it's really complex. And by not taking any breaks, and I know it was 50-50. And this conversation maybe should go back to the individual school boards, but in my workplace, in the workplace of my husband, there's a lot of care for the employees as well, making sure everybody's healthy. So I just wanted to throw that out there before we vote.
Sure. The first piece, Retta, would be that if teachers are ill, we have been working on some contingency planning with how we would cover their classrooms. They are still able to take sick days if teachers needed to be out for whatever reason. I will tell you that our teachers are remarkable, and they have worked so hard and have developed incredible support systems for one another. Teachers are impacted during this just like nurses are, just like doctors are, just like firefighters and our first responders, police officers. They don't have the luxury of not being able to perform this incredibly imperative process of providing our students with a public education. So I will say teachers can take sick time. They've been good about coming up with kind of contingency plans as they would need to be, but our administrators are helping support teachers as best we can. But I think right now, and I would welcome Mrs. Berry to chime in on this, our teachers are providing unbelievable supports for one another. They're sharing resources, they're sharing remote learning tools, strategies. You need to remember our teachers kind of run the gamut of technological expertise. We've got some teachers that are really advanced with how to use online and digital platforms, and we have other teachers that it's been a struggle and they've needed a lot of support. So I continue to be so impressed with how professional educators are and how they have continued to support one another.
So Brian, to that point though, that's why I think that maybe extending, the weekend a couple days extra is so important, because the teachers have been working so incredibly hard. I think that everybody needs to catch their breath, even if it's for a couple days, not the entire week.
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree. I would just share again, having had extensive conversations with Mrs. Grassett, who is the union president of the Goffstown Educational Association. The Goffstown Teachers Association is asking us to work through April vacation, to work through the month of May, and to get out as early as we're able to. So I do want to just make sure that I'm sufficiently representing the will of our teachers.
And what about, have you spoken to the New Boston?
I have. I've spoken, in fact, had a Zoom meeting. I've done lots of Zooming, as we all have, with Karen Jones and Sarah Panarian. They had definitely supported the idea of working through April vacation. And if I remember, I'd have to go back and look at the numbers that they shared with me. They were kind of about 50-50 split on the idea of other days off. But again, I think when you ask teachers, if you take a Friday off, you need to add that day to the calendar in June.
But it wouldn't be added because I mean, the end of school is June 18th anyway, right now. So it would just, we wouldn't be adding anything. We would just be, I guess, deducting or, making it,
True.
making a day's work.
It's depending on, yeah, I would agree with that.
Okay.
Can I jump in real quick?
Can I?
Sure, Sam. Ginny, right after Sam.
Yep, great.
So I brought this up last week. This is why we got a letter from the 6 major education associations at the state level saying that we should build in a flex day during the week, right? So that on that day, teachers don't have to provide a lesson. It's a day for them to catch up, to have meetings, and for their students to catch up. So it was recommended from the Association of School Administrators, the NEA New Hampshire, and it would solve the problem of teachers being overwhelmed, which like I said last week in our New Boston meeting, I've heard from a few teachers, and that was at the elementary school level and the special ed level in particular, saying that they're having a hard time meeting the needs of their students and their family. So, and now I'm hearing from more teachers at the high school level. So, and Brian, you were concerned that this flex day would not count as a school day, but I can't understand how these associations would come together, all 6 of them, and recommend this policy if that's not going to count as a school day. You said that other districts are doing it, and I would imagine a lot of districts are doing it if it was recommended from the state level associations.
Yeah, Sam, you did share that, and I can share this. My position is unchanged from last week. This is not something that I do recommend or support. I did share last week with the New Boston board. If the New Boston board was so inclined, you could make a motion and you could direct me to implement a 4-day week. I might argue whether the days count or not. You would have 20% of our available instructional time where the majority of students would not be receiving instruction from their professional educators. That is something that I continue to struggle with. I would take it one step further. If this board or each of the respective town boards were so inclined, you could adopt an hours-based calendar and you could eliminate a significant number of days off your calendar altogether if that was the effort to do so. So I do, Sam, I continue to be pretty consistent, actually incredibly consistent on this. I do support a longer school day, a longer school year. I recognize that that is not always a popular position, but that is my longstanding belief. I did not agree with the letter that was submitted on behalf of those organizations. The members of those organizations were not asked to weigh in, including the School Administrators Association on behalf of the superintendents. And I do recognize that it would certainly make things perhaps a little more manageable for students to have 1 day off a week. But we have many families that already believe remote learning is not an equivalent replacement of in class for 6.5 hours a day and everything that goes along with that. So Sam, I do respect that opinion of yours. I think that you do represent a probably, I mean, I guess I don't want to say this in any kind of a derogatory way, but I'm sure people would like to work 4 days instead of 5.
Can I just correct you that that's two different things? We're not talking about a 4-day week. We're not talking about a day off. They're calling it a flex day. So it's a day when teachers don't have to offer a lesson. It's a day when they catch up with their students and their students can catch up.
And
special ed students, and when teachers can meet with those special ed teachers and do whatever else they need to do. So it would solve the problem of teachers being overwhelmed, and it would still count as a school day. A lot of teachers are assigning week-long projects. The students are still going to be continuing to work on their schoolwork, and it would count as a school day. So it's not a day off, and I'm not talking about a 4-day week.
I might disagree with you about whether it counts or not, but we don't have to necessarily debate that right now. I would also submit to you, Sam, that our teachers are already given the appropriate flexibility. I have not mandated a 4-day on and 1 flex day model, but I have told all of our principals that I trust and value the opinion of our professional educators. If they assign assignments and they feel that they need to slow down and regroup with kids, the teachers have the individual authority to do that. In a general sense, I do not support a 1 day a week flex model. But for example, high school teachers already have this built in. High school teachers are assigning their work for the entire week already.
And elementary schools are overwhelmed. Teachers are overwhelmed.
Well, I think this has been overwhelming for everybody, Sam. I think it's been overwhelming for our families, for our teachers, and I think at this point we're definitely settling into good routines. And again, respectfully, if it was the will of each of the respective boards, if you would like to direct me to have 1 day a week that was considered a flex day with no new instruction, you could make that decision.
Can I jump in? Because I actually was going to say something very similar to what Sam is talking about. My grandkids have a catch-up day on Wednesday, and we've been talking about people being overwhelmed, parents and kids being overwhelmed as well as teachers. I know teachers who are actually having to make time to do their own personal things in the course of a day because they're busy. Like making an appointment to take the dog out and do those kinds of things because they're busy and have things going all day long at any time, with people getting to them and back to them and whatever. And also kids that are trying to do things and don't always get things done. And so they have this, today was the day, and they were all doing work, and it was just something that they hadn't finished from the day before, or some extra reading that they were doing, and they had activities that were suggested, but they weren't like a big lesson and something that they stressed about doing, and it was more of a comfortable day, less of a stress day, and just that the kids, it was called a relaxed day. Everybody was relaxed. So it's that day in the middle of the week where they do their work, but it's just in a more relaxed setting or atmosphere. So I understand exactly what you're saying, Sam. It seems like you can use it that way so that everybody kind of relaxes in the middle of the week. We still have the kids do work. The teachers are still working. Education is still happening, but you still have a little bit of a relaxed atmosphere for everybody. And I think that would be valuable to everybody's, my opinion.
Does anybody else have any comments? Thank you, Ginny.
Could I call for a vote on the motion that was presented on the floor, please?
What's
Yes,
the motion?
I'm asking if anybody has any other things to say.
At this point in time, can we restate the motion,
Yes.
please? Because here's what I'm thinking, that there is going to be a definitive difference. And if this board by majority, and Goffstown has the majority, is that going to then force the New Boston board to take up a motion that they may just defeat? And does that make any sense? So if you could repeat the motion for me, I'd love to hear it.
Denise is on mute.
I believe that was Jared that made the motion.
Yeah, Ms. Moore, I think, has the minutes, so it'd probably be more
I
appropriate.
unmuted her.
No, she's there. She go. No.
Okay. Jared, you motioned that we cancel April vacation as provided, seconded by Ellen. Then you amended it to recommend as the SAU board for the two boards to cancel April vacation.
Okay, so we're only canceling the April vacation.
Right.
I think we have consensus on that. That pretty much, don't we, Wendy?
With regard to the motion?
To the regard to the motion of no April vacation.
So yes.
Between both boards.
That was the motion I made.
Right. I just don't want to put the New Boston board in a predicament if during their own board discussions, they did not want to cancel April vacation, and we by majority vote, they have to actually make a motion to cancel vacation and defeat it if that's what they want to do. Do you see the complexity of what this SAU board motion would do?
Yes, and
so that's why I'm looking
go
for
ahead,
I'm looking for a consensus. Does the New Boston board have a consensus? Because I think Goffstown already has a consensus that I'm not even sure, but I believe so, that we would want to not have April vacation. I don't know what New Boston looks like.
Yeah, so I'm not sure what New Boston, what their thoughts are. I know what my thoughts are. I'm not sure, and I don't want to put anybody in a situation where we're kind of pushed into the corner by making a motion with the full SAU board.
There's a parliamentary procedure that I can make right now that would flush this out, which would be a motion to table the motion, and that would flush it out, because if we don't table it, then people want to vote. And if we do table it, then people don't want to vote on it.
Or we can withdraw it.
That is true as well.
Tabled means should come up again the next meeting in June. I guess if I may, Wendy, the survey was pretty overwhelming that the public wants us, was overwhelming that the people who replied wanted to cancel April break. I'm at a loss at this point, but if each board wants to make its own decision, that's fine.
Brian, didn't you say that what we would vote on was more symbolic here? It wasn't like ties that bind?
Yes, Tim, I think that this is an opportunity when we think about things like our transportation contract or our school calendar. It's a good idea to get the Goffstown and New Boston boards together, because if Goffstown takes an action, New Boston very often doesn't have much of a choice. So I do think that this is a very collegial way of handling this. And it might make sense to have New Boston board members weigh in whether they're in support of the motion or not. And
if we could,
not that I'm recommending this, and I would not encourage this in any way, but consistent with SAU policy as well as the RSA, there is also the opportunity for a weighted vote, which I am, again, not encouraging.
So Brian, and we have always appreciated Goffstown's, listening to us and
Sure.
New Boston having a voice. We've always appreciated that. And I think this is no different. And one of the other things that always comes into consideration when we do vote separately by both boards is transportation. And so there is no transportation at this time. So, I'm not sure. And again, I don't know what the New Boston board is thinking. So, I'm not sure.
Inquiry.
Sure.
Other than transportation, if Goffstown does something different right now than New Boston does, other than an administrative nightmare for the SAU and for perhaps families that may have different students ending school at different days,
Right.
what other challenges are there? And that was
think
really, yeah, okay.
I'm not sure,
High
Dan,
school
who you
students.
were directing that to. This would be a nightmare for families. So if New Boston Central School students had April vacation off, but older siblings at Mountain View Middle School or the high school did not, that would absolutely create a hardship for families. And you'd have the same thing at the end of the year where you've got some kids that are done school and some kids that are not done school. I think that would definitely be a hardship for families.
I'd like to move the question, please.
So Heather has her hand up. Go ahead, Heather.
Yes, thank you, Wendy. I'm just going to ask, what does New Boston members think? I mean, last week we talked about it in our separate boards. Parents are waiting for us to make a decision. A lot of people are under the assumption this decision was going to be made tonight. Break starts a week from Saturday. So we're all here. Wendy, you've already expressed, but does anybody else have anything to say so that we can move this? Because if we don't make a decision tonight, then we have to wait another week for each of our boards to meet and then let people know. I mean, I'm getting texts as we sit here from parents. What are we doing?
Yeah.
Is that, feasible to ask the New Boston board members to speak up and tell us what you think?
Well, two just did.
Yeah.
Carrie, go ahead.
That's absolutely for you to ask. We had a lot of discussion.
Carrie, hold on. It's a little hard to hear you. You sound like you're a little muted.
She's not muted
I'm
though.
not muted.
I know. You're like muffled.
I don't know, maybe I always sound that way. Can you hear me okay now? It might just be the fact that I'm practically in Francistown. Maybe the connection is getting.
Is anything on your speaker?
Your microphone.
That's what I meant, microphone. No.
Maybe just nice and loud, Carrie.
Yep. Go ahead.
Is it better?
A little bit.
Oh dear.
We're probably going to repeat what you say, Carrie, because I'm not sure that GTV is able to pick it up. This is a little unorthodox, but if you also wanted, you could put it in the chat box.
Okay, wait a second. Just think. It shouldn't be too much longer.
While Carrie's getting that settled, does anybody else have anything to say?
Yes, I'd like to move the question, please.
Ellen, I know you do. I'm
There's
waiting.
already a motion on the floor.
I know, and I'm moving to move that, which means we vote on it.
Heather just asked for the New Boston board to voice.
I personally wouldn't vote to cancel vacation unless we were going to have the recommended extended weekends or flex day that was also recommended.
Thanks, Sam.
Yeah, this is Bill.
Go ahead.
So I would say my first preference would be to just keep April vacation the way it is. My second would be to just get rid of it and get out of school early and be done with it.
Okay.
And just keeping it short and sweet.
So Carrie, you agree with Sam?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, and Goffstown, you're not amendable to extending a long weekend?
Well, that's not actually part of this particular motion. This
No.
motion is either April vacation, yes or no. It's not combined with anything else.
And as a point of reference for Wendy and the rest of my colleagues, I voiced it that way specifically so that we had to make a determination if we keep it or not as one motion. And then if we want to have a second motion about having an extended weekend, we can definitely do that. But I want to keep these very distinctly and very separate.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
And just so that New Boston knows, I would be agreeable to having a long weekend or two off.
I would too. Janelle O'Brien here.
Okay.
Yeah, and Dan is more amenable of canceling the April vacation and going strong because long vacations are not going to happen. They're just not going to happen for the majority of teachers. They're too dedicated. They're going to continue to work.
Right.
No one is going to be able to shut down for that one
That's
day.
right.
It's not going to happen.
So Dan, I respect you, but I also don't know if you can say or make that assumption for everybody.
No, I can't do it for everybody, but I do know that the NEA has talked to Brian, who has made a recommendation, or the GEA rather,
Mhm.
and I have to use that recommendation as a higher weight in my decision.
Right.
I think they've said that they would like to have the vacation stay in school on vacation. I don't know that they've really said that they don't mind a long weekend. And that's what I'm saying. I'm saying like go to school on April vacation, but take at least one long weekend off.
Wendy, I do need to make a call for the motion, to call the motion as it is, because
Yeah.
we've had several instances of people being able to speak their minds. I think that we just need to bring this one motion to a closure at this point.
I concur.
Okay. So for Jared's motion, can somebody remind me who seconded that motion?
Ellen did.
Thank you, Ellen. I'll take a roll call. Tim Stetson,
Yes.
Heather Trapaz,
Yes.
Carrie Jenks,
No.
Dan Cloutier,
Yes.
Sam Perrin,
No.
Ginny McKinnon,
Yes.
Excuse me. What did, Carrie, what did you say, yes or no?
she said no.
Okay.
Correct, Carrie?
Yes.
Ginny McKinnon,
Yes.
Susanna Buzzell,
Yes.
Retta Chaffee,
Yes.
Janelle O'Brien,
Yes.
Ellen Vermarkowitz,
Yes.
Rob Witt,
Oh.
Jared Talbot,
Yes.
Bill Schmidt,
No.
and Wendy Lambert, no.
Motion carried.
Mrs. Moran, can you please recount what that was?
The motion or the counting of the people who
The
just
counting,
voted?
please. The
I'm
counting.
sorry?
The counting.
The counting, okay.
Would it be fair to say that Goffstown was unanimous yes and New Boston was unanimous no? Make it easy.
Yeah, it would be. Tim was yes, Heather was yes, Carrie was no, Jenny was yes, Susanna was yes, Retta was yes, Janelle was yes, Ellen was yes, Rob was no, Jared was yes, Bill was no, Wendy was no, and Sam was no.
So the motion carries to cancel, to work through April break.
To recommend to the town boards
Correct.
that
This
we
is up.
cancel.
Exactly. This has, a decision has to be made at the school board. Goffstown will make it on Monday. But this puts the awkward part. I don't know what New Boston is going to do, but it's going to be interesting.
Could we maybe make some kind of a motion to, maybe make everybody happy and hitch some long weekends in there? I hate to be at a position where we're at odds with New Boston. We always have a good, good working relationship.
I second
But-
that.
Well, you got to be a little more specific than that. I can't vote on that kind of motion.
I know, I'm just putting a thought out there that, is this something that might be helpful to everybody to make New Boston, feel a little bit better about, Goffstown voting yes and you're voting no?
Can I offer something tangible?
Yeah.
If I share my desktop and I go back to the calendar for a second,
Yeah.
I put it away already. I would have to go back and find it, but so that would push, here, let me pull up a calendar on my phone. So right now we were looking at the last day of school being June 11th. If you were to add 2 days to the calendar, which would give you some flexibility, 2 days beyond June 11th. So just to clarify that.
Right.
Oh, there you go, Mr. Gross. Thank you. Can you make it a little bigger, Scott? Might just be my eyes. But that would potentially give us the 12th as a school day and the 15th as a school day. If board members are thinking of 2 days, I would recommend if we could try to come to some kind of consensus on this. I do agree with Heather that the community is anxiously awaiting your decision. And I think if we could clarify that and codify it, that would be my recommendation. So do you want to add 2 long weekends, which would push the last day to the 15th?
A Monday?
Well, that's
a Monday.
That's how the math works out.
Does that matter?
Well, if we add 2 days, wouldn't we add the, oh, no, never mind.
So that would be taking the April break off. No. What would that do? Wait a minute.
You would have a couple of long weekends in May. So
Can I interject for a second? I had a question about the flex day, and it sounded like there was a lot of consensus in the New Boston board, and then there is for me and a couple of people in Goffstown School Board, because those flex days would actually act as a school day versus taking long weekends off and adding. So we just said, okay, yes, we'll let the April vacation, we'll work through that, but now adding days that we're taking off doesn't seem to be making much sense. I do think that the flex days are a great idea. I agree that our teachers probably aren't going to stop working, but I have a small child in 3rd grade, and I know that she could really benefit from some extra just saying hi to her teacher, just checking in on a Zoom meeting or something like that, where she's not bogged down with 3 hours of worksheets every day. That she could maybe, those days that we're taking through the week and maybe we're not finishing our math that day, maybe that flex day is the day that she gets things done and there's maybe no new instruction. I think that's a great model. I fully support that. I think it sounds like a best practice type of model to give everybody a minute to catch their breath, catch up, get some mental health, get some fresh air, work together with their classmates, work together with their teachers and their family, and not being bogged down by constant tasks that they need to be completing through the day. That's just my opinion.
Wendy?
I'm sorry, Ellen. Susanna has her hand up. She's headed up. Go ahead, Susanna. You're on.
So I also have two small children, one in middle school, well, he's not small anymore, and one in kindergarten. And when you're talking about the flex day and so forth, you talk about it from your child's perspective and from the parent's perspective. But the teacher will be still on there and adding to, they will be preparing now extra stuff for the flex day, like Zoom meetings. And they will still be on pretty much email answering questions. So would it help the teachers to have the flex day when they will be adding, they wouldn't have a set curriculum, they'd be adding extra stuff?
No, the point of the flex day is that it would give them a break. It would give them a day from having to prepare a lesson. And it would give them a day.
But what I have heard was that it's a great day that the teachers can catch up with the children.
Sure, but the night before, they don't have to spend hours making a lesson plan and looking for resources and things like that.
Ellen, did you have something?
I guess I'm a little concerned that this discussion is continuing. We've already voted, and that's the way it goes, folks. We don't always agree.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion.
Wendy.
Retta?
Yeah, and I guess, from what I've heard from Brian is that teachers already have the ability to have some sort of flexibility in how they schedule their time. I really, from a high school perspective, I don't think this is really a problem because students